to the Fantasy Footballers Dynasty podcast with Borg, Betz, and a baller.
Welcome in. It's Wednesday, May 28th. We are back. Fantasy Footballers Dynasty podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Borganoni, and it's just Betz here.
Sorry, guys. I mean, what a disappointment, right? They're like, who's it going to be this week? Jason? Is it Mike? Maybe it's both of them. Okay, just Borg and Betz. Well, sorry, everybody. Corporate didn't want to show up, so you just get us.
There goes the corporate over-under. It's already, you already
What did
hit
you set it at, 40 seconds?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, man, I should have waited a little bit. Yeah, what do you think they're doing right now?
Other than eating lunch and just farting around, they are recording 100-plus player profile videos. I have to make sure I say that the right way for the Ultimate Draft Kit. So they get a bit of a pass. Andy, Mike, and Jason right now are putting the finishing touches on the Ultimate Draft Kit, which releases June 1st. So all the hard work that our company put in and everything we get to talk about, a lot of the resources, the stats I'm going to be referring to, some of their startup rankings and rookie rankings today on the show, is there in the Ultimate Draft Kit. So they're working on that right now. It's a busy week. It's okay. Hey, it's kind of funny. I had some people ask me like, hey, what do you guys do? Like in the summer, what is it that you guys do? And I go, actually, our busiest time is this week. This very week, I had a couple of rival dads in the neighborhood say, hey, man, what are you doing? And then I had to flex on and say I was working.
Rival dads. Oh, man, I feel bad for the dads in your neighborhood, Kyle. I know you texted me on, what was that, Sunday? And you're like, hey, man, I had to flex on these dads in my neighborhood, clean out the garage. So I know that you had a great weekend. Yeah, it's funny. Whenever I tell people what I do for work, first off, they say, oh, that's a thing? And then you go through the whole conversation. But yeah, then it's like, oh, cool. So like you must just like do nothing, from February till August. And it's like, well, there's lulls, but there's also insanely busy times of the year, which are really fun times of year. Like you and I love doing the team breakdowns when the Dynasty Pass comes out after the Super Bowl, because it kind of like gets you ready for the upcoming season. And then once the guys finally put in all the numbers, projections, all those sort of things, we look at the NFL draft, free agency, all those things, put it all together. We finally get our beautiful UDK product, which it's kind of crazy to say it's finally here. I have tendonitis in both hands from all this typing that I've been doing. So we're putting in the work for you guys. Hopefully you all enjoy it. June 1st always feels like a holiday for our company.
I will refer to you to our team's injury expert. You can find that in the injury tracker. We're going to add Betz to the injury list alongside some of the other names. On this episode, Betz and I are going to break down a couple different teams and talk about the trajectories. I feel like in Dynasty, we give a lot of player takes. The main questions I think we receive all the time is, who is this player? What are they worth? What should I do with this player? I'm making this trade. When yes, things happen a year at a time, but you are also kind of, if you zoom out, you can have a better perspective of what this team is going to be doing over the next year or two, and it informs some of your decisions. So one of the teams we'll talk about today, the Washington Commanders, are a bit ahead of schedule from maybe where you and I had them when they drafted Jaden Daniels, right? Like they were the talk of the league and must-watch TV. However, all of their skill position players and starters, and I mean all of them, are free agents in 2026. So we're going to ask some questions surrounding that supporting cast of how do you look at those players in 2025? And then does that shift anything about a year from now? I don't know who the running back is. And while they could re-sign McLaurin to an extension at some point, I think it would make a lot of sense to a guy who's been Mr. Washington his whole career. He's very beloved in the clubhouse. We do not know who their starting wide receiver is and who will be on the team other than like Luke McCaffrey and then my fourth round rookie pick, Jalen Lane, who's the greatest wide receiver of all time.
I love that you said in the clubhouse. You got a little baseball in the mind there, Kyle, or what? Come on, this is football. Yeah, I mean, I would be absolutely floored if they don't sign him to an extension. Like you said, he's meant so much to the city, to the team. He's been through it all since he got there. So yeah, I'd be absolutely floored if they didn't sign him. But to your point, that's a great example of a team where you look at the depth chart, you look at the contract situation, and like the likelihood that, the 7th round rookie running back that they got, Ja'Cory Krosky, Merritt, or these Jalen Lane types that you're like, it's probably not going to work. It probably won't. But because of the state of the contracts, like, you got to roster them in Dynasty just in case it happens. So that's a great example of a team that you want access to, and that's a good, cheap way to do it if things break right. And we'll talk about some other teams today too.
So if you want to get all of our rookie rankings, all of the startup rankings, everything, it's in the Ultimate Draft Kit, ultimatedraftkit.com. And then July 1st, we have a draft analyzer coming out that's also outfitted for Dynasty teams. So if you're trying to figure out what season your team is in, you can get all of that, ultimatedraftkit.com. I did have a question before we talk about some of these teams, and it comes from our Discord. And I cannot emphasize this enough. When people send me rosters on Twitter or wherever else, they snail mail it in. They mail it all the way in to corporate, and then from Phoenix to Atlanta, they send it. It's a long process. So when I get a picture of the rosters, it's hard for me to give a full answer to people sometimes of like, here's everything you need. In our Discord, I see so many times people say, here's my team, here's my situation, my league, like I'm a contender or I'm rebuilding, and people can actually assess your rosters way better than I ever could. So shout out to our Discord, Dynasty and Superflex channels. But this one's from Soul Coffin. He says, it's a Dynasty half PPR rookie draft. I'm super excited. I got my ice cold Dr. Pepper, got my nachos ready, and I sit down and look at my team, but my positional needs are not lining up with my projected picks. What should I do here? And then Dragon9 also asked a very similar question. How do you weigh the difference between positional need and best player available in rookie drafts? So from a top level, Betz, how do you approach those types of decisions?
Well, first off, when's the last time you had a Dr. Pepper?
I don't have a lot of soda, I'll tell you that.
Me either. Like, honestly, it might have been 10 years, and now I kind of want one.
A cherry Coke sounds good like once or twice a year, though.
Oh, like on a hot summer day?
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, so this is a common question we get all the time, and kind of one of those Dynasty philosophy type of situations where I'm almost always going to advocate for best player available, because a lot of times when you look at your roster, you think you might be one piece away, or I just need a wide receiver, I just need a running back, I really need a tight end this year. And if those guys are in the same tier, then I'm fine using best player available, or positional need to kind of break the tie. But in general, I'm going off of our production profiles in the Dynasty Pass, our rookie rankings, and really trying to just say, how can I increase the chance that my team is not only better this year, but also if I don't go out and win the championship, I have value moving forward, because that's how you keep your Dynasty team relevant, is you have to have valuable pieces on your roster that A, will score fantasy points, but B, other league mates want those guys, and so you can flip them in a trade or what have you, or if you hit on somebody, you have an expendable asset elsewhere. So I'm always looking at best player available personally, but like I said, if there's a couple guys that are in the same tier for you, or and our rankings are very close, I'm fine breaking the tie in those situations, but otherwise, usually trying to get the best player on my roster.
It's probably best to zoom out and look at everybody in your league and realize what do they need as well, because so many different people need running back. It's not just, man, I'm kind of behind on running back. You look around, it's like, oh, well, that team has like 4 or 5 starters, and that team over there has like 1, maybe 2. Like, they don't have a flex-worthy player at all. So it's easy to kind of zoom in and think what you need, but the rest of your league is probably doing the exact same thing. And running backs in general for rookie drafts, like, we have a spot in this year's which is a little different. If we're comparing 2024 to 2025 rookie drafts, it's a very, very different conversation. But this past year, you waited until the 107 or 8 to start looking at Brooks or Benson. And what it did is it actually pushed up some of the other ancillary running backs to kind of reach in the second round. And this year, you're seeing a logjam of, it's Genty, Hampton, and then after that, Henderson, Judkins are all there, Harvey, Johnson. Those are first-round picks where I think those players are going to be valuable a year from now. So if you need them, they're worth it based on where they're slotted in rookie drafts and why this is a weaker wide receiver class. But in the second round, I find that people reach on so many different needs for their teams, and they end up taking these day 3 running backs that most of the time don't work. Do I want Baishal Tutin to work? Yeah. Like, for show content purposes, and also for a lot of the things that we look at in our rookie prospects modeling. He's good, but he's also a day 3 pick. And there's a lot of issues like, is he ever going to hold on to the ball? I don't know. You said the other day he's probably out of the league.
It's so funny.
People did not like that.
I guess it's just the sarcasm didn't come through on Twitter, which it often doesn't. But yeah, there was a direct quote. Shout out to Coach Speak Index, awesome resource for anybody playing fantasy football. But it was Liam Cohen talking about, it was the first day of mini camp or whatever is happening right now, and put the ball on the ground. Hopefully he learns from that. And I said, man, his career's over. Unfortunately, you can't draft this guy. And the comments were like, I know, man. I told you. I knew it too. He's overrated. He's going to be a bust. It's like, guys, I was joking. Okay, we still have several months to go between now and week 1. But yeah, man, I agree with you that sometimes those kind of fringe guys do get pushed up there. I've seen in some of my rookie drafts that I actually still have one that hasn't started yet, but in some of the ones that I had done over the last several weeks, that you're getting some pretty solid players that sometimes slip to the second round. Like, nobody knows what to do with like Luther Burden, or sometimes one of the 2 big tight ends will slip to the second round. I think there's some decent values at tight end that go in the second round that maybe they don't have like the same insane ceiling as if the 80th percentile outcome happens for Tootin. He's probably going to be a better hit, so to speak, but unlikely to occur. Whereas like, I don't know, Terrence Ferguson might be the starting tight end for the Rams this year and probably next year for sure. And he had the athletic profile you look for. So yeah, there's definitely some values in the second round. And I do think some of these fringe guys get pushed up year over year. We see it every year.
Yeah. And I kind of look at this question of positional need versus best player available as, should I take a running back because I need running back? Or should I take the next wide receiver? Or, maybe it's a tight end, but let's be honest, like you're deciding this year from tight end at the back of the first round. Like that's what you're deciding. And then once you get later on in second and third rounds, you're starting to sort through Ferguson, Arroyo, Fannin, Mason Taylor, those kind of guys. So I find that when I'm in the second round, there's a lot of wide receivers that are all kind of clumped together this year. And Jack Besh is obviously the best one of all of them. Clearly. So that's when you need to take the best player available. That's where you get, Jaden Higgins, those types in the second round. But a lot of those players a year from now turn into flex-worthy guys, so that you can either flip them in a trade, they become startable assets, where a lot of these running backs, you're just taking so many shots that a year later, you're asking yourself, Marshawn Lloyd, Blake Corum, Ray Davis, those kind of guys, like, I guess they're rosterable, and then maybe I could start them if somebody gets injured. That's it. Like, that's where you're at with these guys.
For the most part, yeah.
Yeah, it kind of stinks. So you can get all those rookie rankings. I'm looking right now. I'm glad that Besh is 17, but Andy's still a little far behind. Got to boost that up if he wants to say he's still part of this company.
He's not in the best friends club. He's not our best friend.
Yeah, he's got some other jabronis that ranked ahead of him. So we'll talk to him later about that. Let's take a quick break and we'll jump right in. All right, Betz, we've got about 5 different teams that I want to talk through, and then a couple of different categories just to kind of get some outlooks. But if you want all of the outlooks for all of our teams, team opportunity charts of like, hey, how many targets did the Browns vacate with Elijah Moore leaving? Which you might be like, that sounds like the worst example possible. It does open up. It opens up a ton for Cedric Tillman, though. Like, yeah, this team is just sitting there with basically a brand new roster. And so I was looking at the Browns as one of those like, man, is there any diamonds in the rough here? Is there anything that I can find that nobody else wants because it's a really bad team? We don't know who the quarterback is. We could even be talking about a different quarterback a year from now. Like where it's like, they think Gabriel Sanders isn't the dude. Probably not. They just wasted a bunch of picks. But you can look at all of those. Ultimate Draft Kit. Let's jump in.
Dynasty Download.
All right, Betz, I'm going to let you kick this off first. We're going to start by like a team level approach of here's where this team is at. Here's where they were offensively. Here's what we can kind of expect moving forward. And we'll talk about the contracts. But I really want to lay the groundwork that like, if it's just you and me, let's just talk ball. Let's just talk football and get out whatever Andy, Mike, and Jason would bring up.
I love that. Great idea. Those guys don't know what they're doing. Yeah, the team I wanted to start with today is the 49ers because it kind of feels like this roster is at a bit of a crossroads from what we've known for the last, 4+ years, give or take. Brock Purdy obviously just got signed, and that was kind of the on the to-do list when he emerged as a legit starter in the NFL, when they made that postseason run, when they went to the Super Bowl 2 years ago. Like, clearly they knew they had to pay him at some point. And so when you look at them from a team building perspective, entering last season, they draft Ricky Pearsall as we probably can't keep Debo and Ayuk. They sign Ayuk. They get McCaffrey a 2-year extension a couple years ago. They lock up Fred Warner. So they kind of had to pick and choose who they were going to hold on to. They lost a ton defensively as well. They had to kind of pick and choose their spots as to how they go about keeping Brock Purdy as a starter with a big money contract, but letting some guys walk. And now they're kind of at a point where it's how do we forecast this team and kind of what do we expect? When I think of the 49ers over the last 3 or 4 years, I think of a slower paced offense, very, very efficient, insanely good in the red zone, and then a really good to above average defense. And that's kind of what they've been over the last several years. They've been top 8 in yards per play allowed in 3 straight years. And offensively, they've been top 5 in yards per play in 3 straight years. They were tied for 3rd last year. So you kind of know what you're getting with this team with Kyle Shanahan, who I still think is one of the best play callers in the league. It feels like maybe the shine has worn off a little bit on him. But you think about their year last year, and injuries were the name of the game, right? Defensively, they were crushed by injury. Obviously, the Christian McCaffrey issue happened. Brandon Ayuk tears his ACL. Debo misses time. All these things kind of trickled down, and it led to a good but not great season for fantasy for some of the key pieces, meaning they were 14th in points per game. That's not a Kyle Shanahan offense, yet the efficiency from a yards per play standpoint was still there. They kept stalling out in the red zone, which is not usual for this team. They were tied for 14th in red zone touchdown rate this past season. 2 years ago in 2023, they led the NFL in that mark. So obviously so much of fantasy comes from touchdown production that it feels like a team for me where if I think that can come back, the pendulum can swing back in their favor, that I want a lot of these pieces. And it feels like because of the team building changing around this new Brock Purdy contract, Debo gone, nobody's sure what to do in redraft or dynasty with who's the wide receiver you want. Does Juwan Jennings get another contract with this team? Is Ricky Pearsall the highly coveted first-round pick that they drafted him to be, this heir apparent to Debo leaving? So there's so many question marks for me on all of those things, but from a team level standpoint, I'm very in on what the Niners could be offensively this year. I'm just not sure how to attack it in dynasty. And the other thing to think about with this team, I mentioned they're always one of the top defenses in the league as far as efficiency is concerned. Mike Clay does a great job with ESPN. He puts out his NFL unit grades every year, which basically just looks at, personnel and kind of ranks them 1 to 32. It's a little bit subjective, but I found it very notable. He had the Niners ranked 32nd in defense on paper, basically entering the season. Now, it's fluky, things can change, but they're counting on a lot of young players to contribute this year. And man, if I want to buy back into the offense, I kind of hope the defense is not great and we get some wild shootouts here, which, obviously is very good for fantasy ceiling. So how are you thinking about the Niners this year? Obviously, it's a team we've loved in recent seasons, but it kind of feels like this is a team that we don't really know what to do with right now.
Yeah, so we have a lot of data to look at what the Kyle Shanahan offense is good at. And last year, the biggest blip on the radar, you mentioned some of the red zone issues, just they didn't have the yak plays. They were 16th in yards after the catch per reception. They had basically been first or second every single year since 2017. And the other change is that Purdy kind of gets lumped in all these other 49er quarterbacks of that's just what Kyle Shanahan does. He's got system guys. He's willing to chuck it and chuck it a lot deeper. The ADOT for the Niners last year was 8.6. That's by far the highest of the Shanahan era. And in 2 Purdy years, it's been over 8 yards. So you're getting these bigger plays, and you saw that with some monster Juwan Jennings games. Towards the end of the season, you saw that with Ricky Pearsall, where he just absolutely exploded. Week 17, 8 for 141 and 1 against Detroit, and 6 for 69 and 1 against Arizona. The trajectory, I kind of laughed when they took Pearsall. I saw the Debo and Ayuk contracts at the time going okay, well, they have a plan after this, but it's what is this dude going to do in year one? I find that Ricky Pearsall, in a lot of different formats this year, especially we talk best ball on the DFS and betting podcast, but in Dynasty, Jason brought him up as one of those players that you should probably be trading for. If this team is signaling that they want to throw the ball more with Brock Purdy, and they've been trending that way, there is an ambiguous room right now for him to be the wide receiver one, at least in terms of total targets. So I'm looking at our projections in the Ultimate Draft Kit, and you have to add in CMC. Like, their target share to the running back last year was not normal. They didn't really throw to Mason at all. Garendo's fine as a backup, but I think it's going to trend where Ricky Pearsall could see 120 targets and we don't even blink. And right now, I don't think he's being priced that way. So I would say he's on this team, other than Purdy. I think Pearsall's like the clearest buy candidate for this team.
Yeah, I agree. And, he's not going to be super cheap in a trade because everybody knows, Debo's gone and they drafted him in the first round. This was the plan. But there is also a world that exists where, like in Dynasty, sometimes it feels like you either have to trade for a player when they're at rock bottom value or like top tier value, you trade them away. There's also this middle area where if you see their value increasing even more, or you just like the player and you think they can produce for you, that there's still a window to buy them. And that kind of feels like where I'm at with Ricky Pearsall, where I agree with you. Like, I didn't really love him as a prospect. Like, there was definitely some flaws for sure, but there's something about the end of season run that just kind of catches your eye, and it's like, okay, give this guy context, right? Like, obviously shot in August. It's going to take some time to come back from that. He didn't play until week 7. When he was on the field in week 7 and for like a month, it was very, very rough. But you think about it, it's like a rookie coming into the NFL in a pretty complex scheme that's trying to learn on the fly, basically. So what happens in year 2 when he kind of understands the terminology and, he has the opportunity and all those things, it feels a lot. And I'm not making the player comp, like as far as how they play or their prospect profile or any of that kind of stuff. But like a couple years ago, there was a lot of conversation around like Amon-Ra St. Brown and the late season breakout, which it was longer than 2 weeks, so it's a bit different. But the conversation was like, how good is this guy? Like,
right.
Swift was out and Hawkinson at the time was on the Lions. He was out. It's like, well, he only got this opportunity, only produced because all those guys were out or injured. It's like, I don't know, maybe he's just that good. And I don't know, maybe Ricky Pearsall is that good. I really don't know. But that's kind of how it feels, where you're like kind of making excuses on why it won't work for Pearsall. But I'm big into Brock Purdy this year in fantasy. I think he's an awesome trade target in Dynasty. And if we think he's going to have success this year, and you look at the situation, like Brandon Ayuk coming off a torn ACL, clearly he's the long-term answer here, but it could be a slow start this year, obviously. And then you've got Juwan Jennings in a contract year. This could really open up for Pearsall to be the alpha in this offense. And I don't know how likely that is, but there's a world for that to exist. It feels like the market isn't really on it yet. Maybe we'll get there over the course of the summer, but I definitely am definitely in on that trade target for sure.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where you can profit if you are trying to acquire Pearsall right now. He's kind of viewed, I'm looking at a couple different sites right now, as a top 36 wide receiver in startup. So right around 34, 35. We have him at 36. It's like in that area. But I don't think it would shock any of us if you finish this year as a top 24 wide receiver. And I have a hot stat for you that involves Amon-Ra in that end of season run, because like over that second half, I listed a couple of those games that Pearsall had, but he's one of 14 rookie wide receivers of the last decade to have 3 or more 15-plus point fantasy games over the second half. So you can look at that and go, okay, well, that's cool. He had a couple of games. The team stunk. At the end of the year, they didn't really care. They knew they were going to get a top-end pick. But when I look at that list and see what they did the next year, of those 14 wide receivers, all but 2 of them had a top 24 fantasy points per game season the next year. So like even the profitability of saying he's a wide receiver 36 now to, hey, I think he can finish in the top 24 this next year is a great gap to buy in Dynasty if we think this team is trying to trend a little bit more pass happy. So I think Pearsall, I think we're both on board with that. Not a sentence I thought I would say, as he's just old, so I don't like him, but I do like him now in the context of where he's at now. Any other thoughts, though, on this team? Like, CMC is one of those players that I tried to acquire on a win-now team this year, and yet I'm also terrified that I'm going to overpay for more than just, what he is. Like, for this team, I'm like, I want to win. I want to win right now. It's a super flex league. And I'm going to go for it. And if I get more than a year, that's great. But a championship is a championship. So what do you see for him, age 29 season? He's still under contract for until 2027.
Yeah, signed a big
through
contract
2027.
extension recently for that 2-year extension. I think it was prior to last year, to put him under contract for this season and then 2 more. So obviously injuries can happen and whatever, but you've got, I think, the Christian McCaffrey of what we know as far as when he's on the field and getting the usage. Like he's hard to beat as far as a top 5 running back. I think you're getting that this year. Then you get into this, age 30 season, age 31 season, and the greats, kind of age out gracefully, generally speaking. But you have to ask yourself, like, at some point, do they start to consider the injury history a little bit? Kyle Shanahan's kind of a sicko, and historically has not done that. But when you have a 30-year-old running back with the injury history he has, do they start to back off the touches a little bit? Is the offense so efficient that it doesn't even matter? I mean, that probably is the case. So this is a projected, I think, easy top 10 offense as far as like if everybody stays healthy. I want that RB1, and I want that RB1 especially when it's Christian McCaffrey. So yeah, if you're going for a title, I'm totally fine going out and getting McCaffrey. And you probably have to understand if you do that, you're taking on a ton of risk, but you're just kind of riding this contract out until he retires, which is fine. But definitely, obviously, the value will decrease year over year. It's tough, though. Like, if you got peak Christian McCaffrey for 2 more years, you'd be thrilled with whatever you gave away. I'm curious, what were the trade offers you were involved in there?
Well, they involved swapping quarterbacks. So I would have tiered down at quarterback. I would have gone from Kyler to Geno in this situation. And then I would have given up picks with Kyler to kind of get Geno and CMC. So I was floating it around. It was one of those things like, do I want to give up some of these future assets? Just say I'm going to go for it and tear down. I decided against it, but spinning the wheels, off-season talks. I feel like our trade negotiations never go anywhere. You just send me absolute garbage and just hope that I'm in a low moment in life.
You and me?
Yeah.
Dude, come on. Don't put me on blast like that. I
send offers.
Sucks. I send offers to just gauge where you're at because I know that you're desperate to rebuild and you have like 2 or 3 like guys that people want. And so, yeah, I'll throw you a second, just hope for the best. But yeah, I tell you what, you have Steph Diggs in that league. I can guarantee in August at some point when there's a Drake May highlight on our timeline throwing to Stephon Diggs, you will be sending me a trade offer to try to get Stephon Diggs off your roster.
I'm actually going to set a reminder right now, just like
August 14th.
Yeah, to send you just a little text and see what happens. Yeah, if you've ever been in rebuilding mode, it's one of those things where you can't just like hold it in. People go like, hey, I know what you're trying to accomplish with your team. So I have Josh Allen on that team who's like my best asset. And whether you're rebuilding or not, Josh Allen's just a great player. So I tried to gauge the market of like, hey, what does everybody think about Josh Allen in a 1-quarterback dynasty league? Let me just tell you, people are throwing me absolute poop. It's like, I'm not just going to trade Josh Allen just because I know I'm rebuilding. So people are like, I don't really want to pay up. I'm like, okay, fine. I guess you don't want fantasy points. People don't care.
If I didn't have Jalen Hurts in that league, I would probably be making you an offer.
Okay. Well, that's totally fine. Last little thing on the 49ers. I just want to ask you, Juwan Jennings. I could give you a ton of stats about his first read target share and what he was on a per route basis. And he's basically Justin Jefferson in terms of like on a route per route basis of like, here's what he did for fantasy. Are you viewing him as a wide receiver 2-3 for this year?
It's tough, man. I mean, the peripherals are very strong, high target earner, 2.26 yards per out run, very, very good. But we don't generally see this part of a player's career them break out the way that he did. And if Ayuk had stayed healthy, if Debo, didn't miss some time here and there, if Christian McCaffrey had stayed healthy, if Ricky Pearsall did not get shot, like, does this season even happen for Juwan Jennings? And I think the answer is probably not. So now you're asking yourself, okay, do I think last year was real, or is this an awesome time to get out in Dynasty where he still has perceived value, especially for a contending team? And I think when I look at the contract where, he is set to hit free agency after this season, 28-year-old, generally that's a great time to trade guys away. Not that they won't have value for another year or two, but just in Dynasty, that's how people are, right? When they see 29, when they see 30, they're just like, I'm done with this guy. And that's with like the elites. Like think about what happened with Julio Jones and Devontae Adams in the trade market. Like the elite guys still lose value. Stephon Diggs at age 30. So I think there's a very high likelihood this time next year we're like, yeah, Juwan Jennings, yeah, he's fine. Like no value, whatever. That's how I see it going. So if I am not a top, 6 team in my league, and I think that's very likely that I'll miss the playoffs, I am definitely trying to get out from Juwan Jennings this year.
I'm looking at all of our data in our Dynasty Life Cycle articles, which is in the Dynasty Pass. 9% of wide receiver breakouts occur in their age 27 season. It just doesn't, it doesn't happen. So I think at the end of the day, if you can profit, it's fine. But if you just want to hold and see, do you have a wide receiver 2 flex type player? He was awesome. Don't forget that Rams game in week 3 where it's just like, you were the dude, 3 touchdowns. He was awesome. So definitely an intriguing team. And Betz and I talked about on the DFS and betting podcast, Brock Purdy for MVP is one of our early tickets that is sure to not fail at all. Definitely.
No way
definitely
this doesn't hit. There's definitely no way this hits. Doesn't hit.
All right. I want to go back to the Commanders. I mentioned them at the top. A 12-5 record was not what I had on my bingo card. It was not something that I think anybody, including backwards hat Dan Quinn, saw when he looked at this team. But hey, when you get a generational quarterback who changes the entire culture of the team, not only are the Commanders a good team, they are a fun team. Even being in the same division as your Eagles, I know you didn't want them to win, but also for me, being a person who looks at football all the time, you're like, man, they're really fun. They're fun to watch with, Zacchaeus and whoever else running around out there.
Yeah, they were the story of the NFL last year. And it was, even as an Eagles fan, it was like, wow, this is super fun to watch. I think we got the truth in the NFC Championship game. No, but it was remarkable. And for how well this team performed with Jane Daniels, like you said, nobody saw coming. If you remember back in like preseason this time last year, their win total was what, 6.5?
6.5.
So
I took the under, by the way.
Winning 12 games with that as your win total is just like unheard of. So yeah, nobody saw this coming, but obviously he is different. And it's kind of an exciting time to be a Commanders fan because whenever you have that hit as a rookie quarterback, now you have, monopoly money to spend, basically. You can go out in free agency and get guys. You can be really aggressive and try to go win right now. And I think that's what the Commanders should do, and I think that's what they will do over the next 2 or 3 years.
Some of their metrics for their team, I just want to bring up they were number 1 in EPA per rush. In other words, they were incredibly over the top good. And when you have to add in, Jane Daniels scrambles, which are a cheat code in itself, the most of all time for a quarterback in the, PFF era, they were second in play success rate. So Cliff Kingsbury was one of those offensive play callers that you and I were like, man, I kind of know what he is. I kind of know what he's done. And if you go through those 4 years in Arizona, you're like, okay, well, it's going to be super low ADOT. They're going to be no huddle. And I don't know if this team has enough playmakers. Like we were looking at the roster and saying, okay, Noah Brown, he's kind of fun as a wide receiver 3-4, but they were counting on this dude to make plays, and he actually kind of did. They were counting on the corpse of Zach Ertz, and he did make plays, especially down the stretch. So I look at this team, and last year, their no-huddle rate, 62%, is a top 5 mark of any team over the last 20 years. So it's just over the top how many plays per game you were getting. And they were really good at running the ball. We looked at the running backs before the season. We're like, man, Brian Robinson, he's fine. Austin Eckler, he's coming off a terrible season with the Chargers. He's changing teams, and yet he led all running backs in the NFL in yards per touch. So I just didn't see all of those combining together with a rookie quarterback and them being this good. But we need to frame this moving forward, the trajectory for this team, because Robinson will be a free agent after this year. Eckler, McLaurin, Debo, Ertz, all of these guys will not be on the team. So for dynasty purposes, is there any buy or sell windows, or just how are you assessing this team? Because there is room for them to slightly regress efficiency-wise, and I'm kind of building that in.
Yeah, and I think they will, which, it doesn't mean that this team will be bad or that Jaden Daniels will be bad. I think he's still going to be an awesome fantasy quarterback. I think this team is still a pretty good bet to win 10 games. But the area that they were outlier like this can't repeat kind of thing, is on fourth down. They were well over 80% conversion rate on fourth down, which is just impossible to repeat. So that doesn't sound like a huge deal if it's like, oh, it's only fourth downs. But like if a few of those go in the opposite direction, they don't convert, all of a sudden 12 wins is 9 wins. And then you're not viewed as the top team, one of the top teams in the league. And it kind of has a trickle-down effect as far as how the season goes. But as far as what we're concerned about for fantasy in terms of how well this team is going to perform, I do think there is a window to capitalize on the momentum of the Commanders. And I'm not saying, again, that they'll be bad or that they're going to take a huge step back, but just looking at the team-building plan, they got some pieces on defense. They traded for Deebo Samuel. But like you said, I mean, everybody is a free agent after this year, besides, the GOATs of Luke McCaffrey and Ben Sinnott, the boys.
John Bates,
the guy you need. So, like Brian Robinson Jr. right now, it's like, this is the starting running back for the Commanders. That sentence probably won't be true next year, right? And at that point, he'll be 27 years old. He's not that talented. Like, he's good. He's not incredible. So if there's anybody that I can kind of trade away that isn't a true difference maker and capitalize on, this guy's tied to Jaden Daniels, this guy's tied to the Commanders, I will probably be trying to do that in the trade market. Guys like Brian Robinson, Deebo is interesting because I think he actually fits this scheme very well, as far as like, they're not going to ask him to go out there on the perimeter and beat man-to-man coverage every play. Like, it's a quick hitting offense with screens, which he's very good at, a ton of zone looks, which obviously Deebo has been great at. So I think he's a pretty good fit. But again, this time next year, he'll be 30, probably not a long-term answer here. So there's fringe guys like that are on the downward trajectory of their dynasty life cycle and dynasty value that still have value today because of the new shiny toy of the Commanders. So I think those two in particular are interesting trade targets. And I hate to say it, but just Terry McLaurin's touchdown regression is pretty inevitable based off what he did last year. And so this is another guy that I think this is the sweet spot to capitalize.
You've always hated Terry. Why do you do that?
Dude, it was so fun to see last year. I had the Terry Jaden stack on my like longest standing dynasty team, which I've had Terry since he entered the league, and I held out. And here we are. And now I'm like, anybody want Terry? so it hurts, but I think the writing's on the wall that this team will still be good, but obviously we shouldn't expect just this outlier Superman performance that we saw from Jaden Daniels in the offense.
Yeah, I think just across the board, you're going to expect a small level of, like, when I look at some of those other metrics we were talking about, it's like 6 in points per game. Let's say they end up like 10th or 11th. This isn't small stuff, but like, are they going to be able to run the ball as effectively as they did this past year? I was writing up Brian Robinson Jr.'s Dynasty blurb, and I said, he's never going to win People Magazine's Sexiest Man Alive. He's just not. He's not going to be on the ballot. But he's going to see a ton of work, like 40 plus carries inside the 20, 7 touchdowns inside the 10, as many as Jonathan Taylor. Like, if you want to view him in this window, I think it's fine. Their opening schedule is Giants at Lambeau right after that, which is not easy. Then it's Las Vegas and then at Atlanta. I think they have a pretty juicy opening schedule where, let's say they start 3-1. It's possible they start 4-0. They won't be favored in Lambeau. I think there's a window where whatever you have with Robinson, you can trade. People aren't stupid. They're not going to be like, oh, well, he's not on the team next year. It still provides an opportunity for people to say, hey, this is a good offense still. And let's say he gets 2 or 3 touchdowns right out the gate. Seems like an obvious player that you'd want to trade. I just, in the back of my mind, I don't know if you feel this way about Kingsbury. I just worry that the NFL figures out. Not Jaden Daniels, who was otherworldly efficient, but I just want to remind people that this guy has been in the league multiple times and always kind of been figured out over time. I look at play callers and I go, now, are you a really good play caller or just you have elite players? Like Brian Daboll with the Giants, like you had Josh Allen in Buffalo. Is that how you got this job with the Giants for a couple of years? And same thing with Kingsbury. It's like, okay, you have Jaden Daniels. You're going to get a head coaching job again somewhere because of that dude. Or is it him as a play caller? So any other sneaky names you want to throw out there?
No, nothing sneaky, but we did talk about it just kind of briefly at the intro. Like you mentioned, the running backs that are not under contract next year that are right now, Austin Eckler, Brian Robinson, Jeremy McNichols, Chris Rodriguez Jr. That's 4 dudes. They have 5 on the roster. So they have 1 running back under contract for next year. Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, who was a 7th round pick. Probably not going to work, but just to reiterate, if he is available on your waiver wire, you have to pick him up just in case he is the guy next year. Probably won't be, but you never know. And then I know that you're kind of into Jalen Lane, who's a fun prospect as well. A little older, but again, you're looking at who's under contract next year. As of right now, Terry is not, Debo is not, Noah Brown is not, and then they have a bunch of other fringe guys. It's pretty much only Luke McCaffrey, who, we'll see, and Jalen Lane. So again, if Lane is available on your waiver wire, you definitely have to pick him up.
Yeah, and these are just shots in the dark. Jalen Lane out of Virginia Tech did have some special teams stuff. I think both of them, Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, JCM, and Jalen Lane are basically going to make an impact on special teams, eventually work their way on the field. Hopefully Lane can overtake Michael Gallup, who came out of retirement to be on this team, if he even makes the team. I think you're going to see a lot of 2 tight end sets. They're going to run the ball. That's what Cliff wants to do. But, I mean, a lot can change. So when we look at dynasty value, Jane Daniels, guess what? He could get hurt. He could be worse, and yet he's still going to be a top 5 dynasty quarterback a year from now. It's not going to change anything. It does change how they retool this team in 2026 if they re-sign McLaurin. So just keep that in mind, and keep that in mind with this team. Like I hope that they draft a young wide receiver next year. Like they take a first-round dude as they're still fixing the defense. So let's take a quick break, and we'll talk about some more teams. All right, we're back. I realized we were talking NFC teams. So
are these all NFC teams?
Yeah, we're going to talk another one. I do have a couple other teams in the AFC that I want to bring up, but the Chicago Bears have once again won the offseason. Andy's brought this up a couple times on the main show, and we kind of have to talk about them because when it comes to Dynasty and Trajectory, it seems like everything's going to work out just fine. We're just kind of waving a magical wand. And I don't think we realized just how bad it was last year. Like, it wasn't just like at the end of the day, oh man, it wasn't great with Shane Waldron. No, it was like historically bad. I was looking at this stat with Caleb Williams. Betz, he trailed on 501 of his 680 dropbacks last year. So 74% of the time when he dropped back to pass, they were trailing. Okay. Lamar Jackson has only trailed on 404 total attempts the last 3 seasons combined. So there's a huge difference of just when you're dropping back to pass and you're asking this guy to throw downfield too. It's just a terrible combination. So where do you want to start with the Bears?
Man, that number is wild. Yeah, asking a rookie quarterback behind a below average offensive line and how he plays where he likes to hold the ball and extend plays when the defense knows you're throwing the football, that is a recipe for disaster. But yeah, let's kind of just talk about last year a little bit and then kind of move forward on how we see it going this year. We don't need to reiterate. Everybody knows they underperformed. The expectation was this is the best rookie quarterback we've seen in a long time. Incredible situation with these skill guys and these playmakers. It's going to work. Shane Waldron was abysmal as an offensive coordinator and play caller. The offense with him in town, 32nd in yards, 28th in points. And you've seen the Jackson Smith and Jigba interviews from when he was in Seattle and kind of says like, he's a nice guy. Like clearly like the NFL circles are kind of out on Waldron right now with how he's run his offense. So you take that and you say, okay, context is important. There's a reason Caleb struggled a little bit. The scheme was terrible. The coaching is not great with Eberflus. I'm not sure if people saw the story that's about to come out of the book that's been written about the Caleb pre-Chicago Bears drama that may have unfolded. It seems like the support system was not there for him. How much of that is him? How much of that is the team, the coordinator? I'm sure it's a mix of all those things, but just like this was not a good system the way we thought it was for a player to be dropped into. Now you get Ben Johnson, and everybody's like, oh, Ben Johnson's here, so it's obviously going to work. And don't get me wrong, I think that the upgrade in play caller and scheme is incredible. I'm with everybody in that take, and I definitely can see that. But what I'm kind of questioning is like, what is the vision for Ben Johnson with the offense as far as his play calling tendencies. Because when you go back to his time in Detroit, you've got Gibbs for a few of those years. You obviously had David Montgomery for a couple of those years, but historically, they've been among the league leaders in neutral situation rush rate, and they've also been among the league leaders in 12 personnel. Last year, the Lions were third in the rate of 12 personnel. The season prior, they were 12th. But when you look at the state of the roster, like, sure, they could run 2 tight ends with Cole Kmet and Colson Loveland, but a lot of the resources are invested into DJ Moore, Rome Odunze, and then this year, Luther Burden. So something to me like doesn't fit with this run-heavy approach that Ben Johnson has taken in the past, with a running back room that looks like DeAndre Swift, Roshan Johnson, Kyle Monangai. Like, the pieces aren't fitting together as far as what he's done historically. So I have a major question as to, like, does Ben Johnson just flip the script? And the best play callers will do this, where they'll say, I will fit my scheme and my play calling to the strengths of my offense. I don't think he views DeAndre Swift as the strength of this offense. He talked about taking the job. He's like, I took it because of Caleb. Like, I think this team could be super pass heavy and almost kind of just surprise us a little bit with how pass heavy they are. And you look at their moves, right? Like, they take Colson Loveland 10th overall. They come back in round 2 with Luther Burden. So kind of following the tea leaves here, like, I'm pretty excited about the pass volume for this offense. The question is, can Caleb capitalize and do it? And then from there, it's like, how do these targets break down? Because there are so many dudes here. Moore, Odunze, I think Zacchaeus is even like a fine wide receiver 4. Luther Burden, they got 2 serviceable tight ends. Like, it kind of feels like somebody might lose out here. I just don't know how to attack it. So that's where I'm at with this team. I'm excited as everybody else is, but I do also kind of just wonder, like, remember those couple Lions seasons? Like, there was one year where they were pretty terrible early on when this new staff arrived. Then you saw like a lot of signs of like good things are happening here. And then it was like a couple years until they're the Lions that we know today. It feels like to me maybe 2025 is a stepping stone for 2026, because I was surprised to look at this. Their odds to make the playoffs, which is not it's not a perfect metric because their division is tough and schedule's different for teams and all those sort of things. But like, they've got worse odds to make the playoffs in the betting markets than like the Jaguars, the Dolphins, the Seahawks, the Cardinals, the Patriots by a wide margin. So I don't know, man. Like, everybody I think is envisioning 11-win season. Here we come. The win total is 8.5. I don't know what to think about this team as far as that is concerned. But just like everybody else, I'm very excited. So what are your thoughts on Chicago?
Yeah, I think that first year with Ben Johnson was 2022, where that second half you're like, okay, so I think they believe in Dan Campbell. We were all kind of rooting for them. And then these last 2 years, they turned into an offensive juggernaut. The biggest difference between how Ben Johnson called plays and then whatever Shane Waldron was doing last year is that they were giving these huge down the field throws that we loved in preseason. We came on this podcast, remember, we talked about, man, that Caleb Williams to Rome Odunze off platform throw, that's cool. The problem with those types of, throws is they just don't happen that much in the NFL. They're not repeatable. And so Shane Waldron started the offense out by saying, let's chuck it deep. Rather than what you do with a young quarterback is you do what they did with Jaden, like give him these low A-dot throws. And even the most creative quarterbacks that have really big arms or can throw off platform, you kind of saw that's what the Chiefs did with Mahomes. Like, Mahomes was the comp that people shouldn't have used, but they did use for Caleb Williams. And if you notice, like, over the course of his career, his A-dot has gone down a ton, his percentage of 20-plus yard pass attempts. That's what they need to do with Caleb, and they kind of are showing it with the Luther Burden and Colson Loveland, like closer to the line of scrimmage targets, so that you can open up play action, so that you can open up down the field stuff. So I don't know if they're going to be able to run the ball the way that they did in Detroit. Like, it's just not going to be able to happen where you get, you're top of the league in rush rate. That dictates you having a good defense, which they did last year, and the personnel of Montgomery and Gibbs. And I don't think the personnel's here. I think you're going to see a lot of outputs, though, where DJ Moore caught 6 balls for 60 yards. And then, did he get in the end zone? And that's going to be frustrating for fantasy. So overall, I think we all expect Caleb to move forward. I think he will, because he has a grown-up calling plays this year. But I think overall in this year, I think we're going to be disappointed of the total output.
Interesting. So how are you attacking that in Dynasty formats? Like, I mean, DJ Moore, again, this is just how we are as Dynasty players. When you see 28, 29, and then the dreaded 3-0 next to a player's name as far as their age, their value just decreases. It just happens. So are you taking these recent draft picks and signings to kind of say, like, it's a great time to capitalize on DJ Moore and the hype of the Bears, or do you have any actionable takeaways there? Because I've seen some takes out there from people that are really disappointed with Rome Odunze and think it might not work, and then I've seen other people that say, like, don't forget he was a ninth overall pick. He's gonna be great. Don't worry. I've seen some people say Luther Burden could be Amon-Ra St. Brown in this offense. He might be the wide receiver one. So it kind of feels like everybody has their own personal take, and truthfully, I don't know where I stand because there's so many moving parts. But it feels like if there's one guy that you could kind of say, he'd be really attractive to a contender, maybe my team isn't it, I can capitalize on this in the trade market. Is DJ Moore that guy for you, or what are you thinking about as far as their personnel moving forward?
Odunze would be the player that I would love to acquire, but yeah. I feel like most of the guys are priced appropriately for where they're at in this team's trajectory. So, like, what did they accomplish last year? Jack squat. It was bad. It was really bad as an offense, like across the board. And yet you're seeing the price still baked in as if they were good or they're already good. Like, Rome Odunze right now is seen as a top 20 Dynasty wide receiver. Top 15 by some people if they're really aggressive, but let's just put him at top 20. He hasn't played enough to actually deserve that, which is odd because the player that's ahead of him in the depth chart, DJ Moore, was that dude for years. It's like, well, he's young. And yet he never really delivered on being a top 20 wide receiver until way down the line with Justin Fields. So I think at the end of the day, all the dudes are priced up. I traded for Colston Loveland because I wanted a part of this offense in a league, and I was able to trade Jordan Addison and a third-round pick to get him, which felt like it was tough because Addison's been really good. It's just he doesn't feel like somebody who's going to be a difference maker on one of my rosters. So I have Loveland, and I was glad to get a piece of this offense, but I feel like nobody's cheap.
Nobody's cheap, man. The people are hyped for the Bears. They won the offseason again. We'll see what happens.
So, I don't know. DJ Moore, I feel like, is also in no man's land where if I buy in, I'm buying in as if this offense is going to break out for a player that still has a ton of life left. Like, his contract, dude, this dude's going to be on this team forever.
They are paying him a ton of money.
I'm shocked that they did that along with the moves that they've already done as well.
I wonder though, like, how much of that was Ben Johnson being like, the state of the roster right now is not good enough. Let's get some more dudes. Or was just mismanagement of, funds and resources or whatever. But they do have a rookie contract quarterback here, so they've got some money to spend.
I'll just say I don't think Swift or Roschon is going to be the starting running back in 2026. So buying in now for what you assume is going to be a good window based on what another team did is just not how I play Dynasty. I'm just not using Lions stats to boost Swift long term. Now, for this year, if you can get him for something cheap or if he's already on your roster, just hold and see what he is, and that's totally fine. But Swift did this when he went to the Eagles, and he just happened to be behind a good offensive line. It didn't actually change anything about the player, right? Like, when you saw him as an Eagles fan, you're like, oh, he's giving what the offensive line is giving him.
Yeah, and he was fine. And maybe that happens again this year, but that's what I was saying about the pass rate. Like, we've already seen this with Swift, with Ben Johnson. They didn't really want to load him up with a ton of carries. I don't know how they feel about Roschon Johnson. He wasn't Ben Johnson's guy. They do have the same last names. Maybe that matters. But like, following their moves, it's like, I think they just want to chuck it and use play action, but not be the focal point of the offense. So I'm really interested to see what that, like, pass rate of expectation is, what their neutral pass rate is, because again, with the Lions, it was very low as they leaned on Montgomery and Gibbs.
I want to bring up the Panthers. It's not a team that I feel like over the last couple of years has been a good experience in Dynasty at all. Like, across the board, if you're one of those people that was, just foolish enough to say, man, I feel like Terrace Marshall Jr. is going to really work out with the Panthers, like me, then you've been duped before. So they were 5-12 last year. If you really have to kind of look at a couple different windows with the team, it was Bryce started the year, Dalton came in and they were like, this is what's good for the team. It's like, no, what that actually means is Bryce wasn't good. And you don't think he's good enough to keep trotting out there. And then Bryce and the team from week 12 on was a different story. So when Bryce came back, he had a little moment to adjust. And from week 12 on, they averaged 25 points per game. That was top 12 in the NFL. And the craziest thing about Bryce Young is he started running the ball. Like he was second in quarterback scrambles from that moment on, 7th in fantasy points per dropback, 5th in ADOT. So you can look at that and say, look at what he did at the end of the year. This is where things are heading. This is why this team is good. There is some fluky stuff. I want to point this out and use that to kind of set up Ted McMillan and the rest of the offense and get your takes, Betz. But this is per ESPN's Ben Solak, Ben Solak's great. He said, starting in week 5, Young was 4th in the league in completion percentage over expectation, but 31st in off-target rate. So like those are two conflicting stats. You can use one to say he was really good and the other one and be like, I don't think he was very good. That's what stats are anyway. We just share whatever sounds good on the mic. But basically, he was connecting on downfield throws, and yet on other throws he wasn't. It's just not something that's sustainable long term. And a lot of deep completion numbers year over year just don't work in the NFL. So what is your take on Bryce Young? Because I think while Caleb Williams is one of those players we're all expecting to take a step forward, I think subtly we all think, oh, well, Bryce is clearly better than what he was in year 1. Therefore, the rest of this offense must be trending in the right direction as well. Is that how you are taking it from just vibes alone?
I think both things can be true, where Bryce Young is better than he was as a rookie, obviously, but also doesn't necessarily mean that it will continue to get better and better and better each year moving forward there. Like, I think there's a chance that what we saw from Bryce Young last year down the stretch might be kind of the median expectation, or maybe even the high-end expectation, quite frankly, where he's like a serviceable starting NFL quarterback that can support a couple of fantasy players that we care about, but never really move the needle to make this team, a locked-in playoff team in future years. So, yeah, I think the truth is somewhere in the middle on Bryce Young. I will say, last year we had the conversation in the offseason of like, well, Dave Canales comes in, he's always gotten great quarterback play out of the guys he's coached, and they put some effort to put some pieces around Bryce Young, right? Like, they have Xavier Legette, who they drafted highly last year. It's kind of funny in hindsight to say this, but they brought over Deontay Johnson. Like, that was the conversation. They took Jatavian Sanders in the 4th round. Like, they're trying to give him some weapons. Jonathan Brooks obviously didn't work out because of the ACL the second time, but like, they're trying to give him weapons to support him. Let's see what happens. And with that crew, which still is not great, he showed some flashes. Now you get a legit top 10 pick in Tedero McMillan, who, there was a period of time in like the cycle of the NFL draft, which always happens, where these guys are highly touted, then they get dragged through the mud because that's just what happens in the NFL draft, and then all of a sudden everybody's like, oh yeah, he is actually pretty good. And I think Ted McMillan's a great just developmental type of guy with Bryce Young, where you probably need a guy that can win on the perimeter and get some of those 50-50 balls to give Bryce Young a chance. And Ted McMillan is more than that, don't get me wrong, but like, this team did not have a true wide receiver 1 last year. Like, Xavier Legette just is not that. Not saying he doesn't have a role in the NFL. He's just not. Adam Thielen, clearly not that anymore. Like, it has to be Tet for him to continue to improve in Bryce Young. So I'm in on McMillan. I'm in on Chuba. I'm in on this offense being more competitive in the second year with Dave Canales, but I do not think that just because Bryce Young was better last year, that means that he will definitely keep getting better year over year. But I think they'll be, like I said, more competitive. I don't know, 7 wins on the table, something like that.
I'm looking at other recent first-round quarterbacks and what they accomplished in fantasy, and kind of using that as a template for what could we be doing with Bryce a year from now. Like, those are the kind of questions I'm asking when I look at players, not just like, what are they going to do for 2025? But a year from now, are they going to be more valuable, less valuable, the same? What are the different paths? So maybe he goes the Trevor Lawrence path, who once he got out from Urban Meyer and, gets a real coach, real play caller, he ends up being a serviceable and a franchise quarterback, right? He got the bag. He did have a season, his sophomore year. And the team says, this is the dude. Okay, this is our guy. There are other routes where, like Justin Fields, his second year, he was really good for fantasy, but by year 3, it was clear, like, okay, this isn't the guy. We're going to re-roll, and they end up with the number 1 pick, and they took Caleb Williams. There's also the Anthony Richardson route, which we're going into year 3, and we're going, okay, if this isn't it, then they're going to re-roll. And it's just a different quarterback in 2026, a different coaching staff, all that stuff. I think we believe that Dave Canales, as a play caller, is good to one of the better ones in the league. And they definitely improved in a couple areas. They definitely started to get more aggressive on 4th down, which I love seeing that. But it is a question of, do they view this player, because they are so far in with the number 1 overall pick of who he was, that they just say, hey, even if he's just fine this year, we're just going to stick with it. A couple years ago, it used to be where if you took a quarterback at number 1 overall, that's your dude for the next 4 to 5 years. The NFL has changed a little bit, where teams are very much willing to say, like, hey, we'll give you 2 years. The first year, it's a rookie year. It's fine. The next year, okay, we want to see some improvement. The third year, we'll give you 1 more shot. And then it's kind of like they get to make or break, because also if your team stinks and you're drafting at the top, you want to draft a quarterback. You're not just trying to like get by. So I think overall people assume that he's figuring it out and that this is their guy and they're outfitting him with weapons. That's what I'm assuming in Dynasty. But I'm just like laying out the paths. Like, it's not a guarantee that he is the franchise quarterback forever. And then more importantly for the game we play, if he doesn't hit a meaningful amount of like I'm talking like 17 to 18 fantasy points per game in year 3, you pretty much can write him off as ever being the dude. Baker's the only guy later in his career who was a first-round quarterback who eventually became a QB1 like that.
Yeah. But does not mean he won't have value in Superflex as a, middle QB2.
Especially if he's going to run like this. This was not what he did in the first year.
Yeah, a large percentage of his points for fantasy came with his legs down the stretch. How sticky is that? Going back to his days at Bama, like he would run a little bit, but like he wasn't running as the first option. Like he would scramble a little bit here and there, but it wasn't his calling card. So I'm really interested to see if that sticks moving forward or not. But yeah, I think the take home is like we see the path where this continues to trend in a positive direction, but there's also a chance that if he regresses, if McMillan just doesn't hit as a rookie, if Leggett isn't good enough to be even a wide receiver 2 in the NFL, like this team could once again win 5 or 6 games and they're picking 9th overall. And at that point, all bets are off as far as what they could do from a team building perspective. So yeah, it does feel like a pretty obvious make or break year as far as Bryce Young goes.
All right, I'm going to give you a couple names to compare with Bryce Young. Would you rather have Bryce or Jackson Dart?
Ooh, that's tough. I will chase the scramble upside of Dart, but I don't feel insanely confident in that.
Yeah, it's pretty close. Mike has Dart a little bit higher in his rankings. Andy's a little higher on Bryce Young. So I think it's pretty much a coin flip. I think I like the trajectory of the Panthers a little bit more than the Giants. The Giants, the schedule this year is going to be rough. It's going to be tough. All right, Bryce Young or Michael Penix Jr.?
Man, the Falcons
Which
are putting
team is definitely going to be better in the NFC South.
the Falcons
I don't know.
are putting
I have no idea.
all the resources, their bets, the chips are in on Michael Penix. I don't know, man. I honestly think I might prefer Bryce Young only for the fact that like Penix is probably giving you a 0 in the rushing department most weeks. But I wouldn't be surprised if Penix works out and he's the starter for the next couple of years and Bryce Young isn't. So I guess from like a long-term stability standpoint, I feel better about Penix, but I think there's a higher fantasy ceiling output for Bryce Young.
Ask me depending on the day. One day I'll be like, I think we got it with Penix. And then the next day I'll go, but I know us. I know the Falcons. They think they're smart. They are not smart. All right, one more name. Bryce Young or Tua?
Ooh. I honestly could go either way on that one. I think I lean Tua, but again, that is not strong conviction at all.
They are literally back-to-back in our rankings. Tua is 27 years old. Bryce is about to be 24. I think I lean Bryce of just where things are heading with the Panthers. The the Dolphins could be a completely different team next year, which leads me to a couple of final quick hitting questions here. Betz, we have a category here that I wanted to make sure we get. Which team are you just most scared of? Are you quietly nervous about? And you wrote the Dolphins. Are you just things
the
could
vibes
change?
are bad, man. The vibes are bad. Like, you think about what's on the roster, and it is really good offensively. It's top heavy, but it's there. It's like, okay, you've got Tyreek, you've got Waddle, and Tua can play well in the system. I know he's not perfect, but he can play well in the system. They've got Devon Achane. Like, they have all the pieces. But when you look at moving forward, it's like, okay, did Tyreek regress? How much of that was the wrist injury? This team is 28th in cap space next year, so they're kind of at a crossroads as far as how they're going to manage things going forward. The defense on paper projects to be a major liability. So, like, is the scheme that's built off of running the ball and play action with Mike McDaniel, is it built to play from behind, which they might have to do this year? I don't really know. The Tua health concerns aren't going away. So it just kind of feels like a team that is trending in the wrong direction and kind of at a point where it's like, this is make or break for Mike McDaniel. If they continue to lose against good teams and the narrative is there that they don't win cold weather and on the road and in the playoffs, I think there's a pretty decent chance Mike McDaniel is not the head coach of this team next year, and that creates a whole cascade of events as far as what occurs in Miami. So they're a team that I feel like I wouldn't be surprised if they have a great season. I also wouldn't be shocked at all if all of a sudden this is like a 5-win team and we're like, oh, I guess this team's going to look a lot different in 2026.
Yeah, I have the Giants down as a team that everything looks like it's trending the right direction, but based on their schedule and based on some of their skill position players outside of Malik Neighbors, I do have a ton of concerns. I also wrote down for Jackson Dart, I say, is this Kenny Pickett territory? Because traditionally, if you are picked as a late first-round player, we just kind of lump them in with the rest of the group. But like, if you're picked at 25, it's very different than if you are a top 10 pick. And with Pickett, it's kind of like the Steelers quickly realized, like, okay, we're going to re-roll this thing in a couple years, and they still are about to do that again. So I worry about his dynasty value a year from now if this team is bad, if they don't have Dable. And my other question mark I put for Malik Neighbors, who's elite, he's awesome. There is a route where he ends up getting a Garrett Wilson type year where he sees 160-something targets on a really bad team and he keeps having to change his quarterback. That sucks, man. Like, nothing about the player. He's incredible. I would love to have him on my dynasty team. But we've kind of seen that there are elite target earners that are stuck on teams that are just bad, and they never figure out the quarterback position, and it kind of stunts their dynasty value. I don't want to say anything negative about Neighbors, though.
Don't put that out there. Come on.
Okay, one more thing.
Take it or leave it.
Betz and I were doing some more team discussions, and we kind of stumbled upon this stat. And so this is kind of a take it or leave it. We were looking at some teams that were supposed to be bad last year, like the Broncos, like the Commanders. And since 2015, there's been at least one team that drafted inside the top 10 that either won their division or, and I had to add this caveat, won 12 games. That's what Minnesota and Washington did last year. So a team inside the top 10 that can completely change their trajectory, because if you're picking inside the top 10, you usually stink. Give me a team right now that you're like, hey, I think they could change it.
Oh, man. Well, I'm trying to pull up the NFL draft order real quick off the top of my head because the teams that were drafting there were there for a reason and they're not great. But, I mean, looking at like the Broncos last year, the recipe for success for them was exceeding expectations from the quarterback and a really good defense. I don't see a ton of the same situations. And obviously the quarterback class is different this year, but like, I don't know, the Patriots are a team that they've got a young quarterback that we like and that seems to have hit, at least as far as what we've seen in year one. And I think the team just could be so much better than people realize. Like their win total is at 7.5 and on some spots 8.5. The head coach is way better than what they had last year. They spent a lot in free agency on some nice players on defense. I feel like the Patriots might be that team this year. That feels cheating because, I don't know, the Browns just aren't going to, and, the Titans probably aren't going to. Like, there aren't a lot of teams to pick from, so I'll go with the Patriots, but I'll be honest, it feels like cheating.
Yeah, I think it's hard to pick the Patriots too to say they're going to win their division when you look at Buffalo. But could they make the playoffs? And we have to adjust that stat again, maybe. I will say Jacksonville could win that division.
That's a good one. Yeah, that's a good one.
They don't really fit the makeup of like a Bo Nix or a Jaden Daniels coming in. So the obvious answer is the Bears. There's Bears fans just like screaming like, we were picked 10. And
yeah, but I don't really count them.
Oh, they don't matter?
Well, no, just like everybody sees the path where they're awesome this year. So the Broncos, nobody saw that. Years prior, nobody saw the Commanders. It's gotta be a shock.
Yeah, and you like the Patriots more than anybody should. So, I mean, that's your thing, man. That's you're all in on the Patriots this year.
What could go wrong?
That's going to do it for this episode. Next week, I don't know if you realize this, we have a Dynasty startup mock that will happen on the podcast.
Let's go.
Yeah, to kick off UDK season, we will make sure that we have one of those in early June for you. Make sure you check out the draft kit, ultimatedraftkit.com, and we will see you again next week.
We'll see you then. Have a great weekend. Goodbye.
Thanks for listening to the Fantasy Footballers Dynasty Podcast. If you want to take your Dynasty skills to the next level, check out thefantasyfootballers.com.